Gas prices have spiked the highest that they've been since 2023 as the Iran war escalates. Here at my neighborhood gas station in downtown New Orleans, gas prices are up to $3.29 a gallon. I can remember just about a month ago paying almost $2 a gallon. The Secretary of Energy also says he's more than happy to tap into the reserve if it becomes necessary. So Wednesday, the International Energy Agency said that it would release 400 million barrels of oil from its strategic reserves. That's the most in this multinational organization's history as a result of this escalating Iran war. They're trying to soften these higher gas prices. Now, economists say that a coordinated effort from several countries will help make a difference. It will take some time for that reserve oil to hit the market and for consumers to notice a big difference at the pump. And so far, the IEA has not commented on a specific time frame of when that reserve oil might be making a difference.
Where should we begin? Oh my God, this gets harder every day. But here's the news in 90 seconds. Expect to hear a lot about gas prices this week as the war Trump started in Iran continues with no end in sight. Gas prices are up to $3.47 a gallon on average, up 60% since last week. How do I explain this? The reason the prices are up is because of all the missiles flying around the Middle East that are making it difficult for oil tankers to move around and deliver the oil that can then get to us consumers to heat our homes and power our cars. Anyway, so those oil tankers are trying to avoid being hit by the missiles. The critical point on the map here is actually the Strait of Hormuz. So the Strait of Hormuz is closed by Iran, who controls it because we bombed them. And it definitely doesn't help that Israel bombed several Iranian oil refineries and fuel sites over the weekend, making the air unbreathable in Tehran, which is a city where 10 million people live. Also, NATO in Europe had to intercept another missile from Iran that was aimed towards Turkey. So now Europe might have to get involved in all of this because you can't just have this flying all over your continent, of course. It's really bad. In other pretty bad news that's related to the last bad news I just told you, the two teenagers from Pennsylvania who lit explosives outside of the mayor's mansion in New York City while he and his wife were home have been charged by the DOJ with terrorism. When asked why they did it, they wrote down that they pledged allegiance to ISIS, quote, "Die in your rage, infidels." Pretty clear. And I'm sure that this has nothing to do with the heightened terror threat environment that's happening as a direct result of all the bombing in the Middle East. And that was the news in 90 seconds. And now you know what the fuck is going on. Oh, that was a rough one.
Britain has just 2 days worth of gas stored as the war in Iran disrupts global supply chains. Last week, Qatar was forced to halt liquefied natural gas production following Iranian drone strikes. And a key shipping route, the Strait of Hormuz, has been blocked as the crisis in the Middle East escalates. So, is Britain about to run out of gas? Well, not exactly. Concerns have been raised that the disruption could lead to Britain's supply running out, but the government has branded these reports as scaremongering. That's because the majority of Britain's gas comes from domestic production in the North Sea or via pipelines from Norway. However, the UK still relies on imports of LNG gas from Qatar, as well as the United States and a handful of other countries. But what does this mean for your energy bills? It's almost certain that the crisis in the Middle East will lead to a prolonged spike in gas prices, which ultimately impacts UK households. The hike on UK energy prices will be felt in July. That's the next time the energy price cap increases. As it stands, analysts are predicting that energy prices could rise by as much as £160 per year. But the total impact will depend on how the crisis plays out over the coming months. While there are still many uncertainties, one expert told me it feels like this could be worse than the spike in energy bills following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So while Britain isn't about to run out of gas, the crisis in the Middle East will be felt for a long time.
The Iran war could not have come at a better time for Russia. As fighting spreads across the Middle East, energy markets are going into panic mode. Gas prices in Europe have spiked to a 3-year high. That's where Russia comes in. It still holds the largest natural gas reserves in the world. And even after the invasion of Ukraine, Europe still buys some Russian pipeline gas. In fact, Russian gas still made up about 13% of EU imports in 2025, worth over 15 billion euros a year. Now, Putin says that Russia may stop selling most of its gas to Europe altogether. Instead, he says Russia could redirect supplies to more promising markets. Not a political decision, just business, he says. But Europe's gas storage is below 30% full, around the same level seen in the 2022 energy crisis. So if all supply disappears, Europe could be facing another massive energy shock. For Putin, higher oil and gas prices are a lifeline. Russia's war in Ukraine has been draining the economy for years. But rising global energy prices could bring back billions into Russia's budget. Whatever pressure Putin may have felt to make concessions in Ukraine may be fading.
Whenever prices surge during a crisis, and we are in an oil price crisis at present, we're always told the same thing. We're told there are shortages, and there are right now. We know that oil and gas are increasing in price because of war in the Middle East. But that is only half the story. Right now, we know that something else is going to happen as well. Oil companies are going to record profits. Energy traders are going to make extraordinary gains, and electricity generators are also going to be bringing in the cash in a way that is not normal. Why is all that happening? That's because market structures allow companies to turn uncertainty of this sort into profit. That is why inflation during crises can sometimes be something quite different. It's not shortage-led inflation, it's profit-led inflation. And profit-led inflation is exploitation. We need the government to protect us against this exploitation, and we need them to do it now. There need to be windfall charges on the companies who are going to make a great deal of money out of our suffering right now.
Why could petrol prices suddenly rise because of a conflict between the US and Iran? Well, here's the reason. A huge portion of the world's oil supply runs through the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow shipping route near Iran. If tensions rise between the US and Iran, fears are that the oil shipments may be disrupted. When the global oil supply looks uncertain, the price of crude oil normally rises. And because the UK buys oil on the global market, that means petrol and diesel prices here can increase too. So drivers could end up paying more, and higher fuel costs can also push up prices for deliveries, transports and everyday goods across the country.
I think most politicians are doing the best they can with the situation. And we just got to ride with it for the moment and see how it all pans out.
I think I've got quite used to them going up now and probably reduced how much I drive anyway. But yeah, more and more increases. I suppose, yeah, we'll have to have a think as a family about how that impacts us and whether we can still have two cars and yeah.
That's why a conflict thousands of miles away still finds a way to impact us here in the UK.
Hi, everyone. About a minute on the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and what it means over the long term. And I think one thing that is clear is that it shows Europe is going to have to start drilling for oil and gas. Before I get to that, if you don't know me, my name is Robert Bryce. I'm a journalist. I'm a reporter. I give you the numbers and the facts, not the spin about energy and power. Okay, so first, what about the war? Well, who knows what's going to happen next? Today, Iran's new leader said that Iran is planning to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. What does that mean? It means that 20% of the world's crude is now not moving through the Strait of Hormuz, and 20% of the world's LNG cargoes are now stuck inside the Persian Gulf. And that, of course, has led to major increases in prices. Brent, which is the European marker, is now about over $100. West Texas Intermediate, which is priced, of course, at the Cushing hub in Oklahoma, is at $95. They're both up by nearly half, or rather 30 or 40% just in the last week or so. But all of this is ignoring what's happening with natural gas, which is the other key commodity that comes out of the Persian Gulf. And you can tell what the importance of natural gas by looking at what has happened in terms of price at what's called TTF. That is the trading hub for most of European gas, traded at around a hub in Holland called TTF. Before the war, a million BTUs of natural gas at TTF was about $11. Today, that's on the front month price. Today, it's $17. By comparison, the Henry Hub price today is about $3.23. Before the war, it was $2.94. So what does that tell you? The U.S. has been insulated on the natural gas side because we have so much natural gas and we're drilling for gas. Europe is not. And in particular, I'll just talk about Britain. Britain has enormous gas resources. There was a survey that was done, an analysis that was done about a year and a half ago. In Lincolnshire, there's roughly 16 trillion cubic feet of natural gas resource could be drilled and tapped. And that would be enough fuel for Britain. If Britain just used that field for natural gas, enough to provide several years worth of fuel. So regardless of what you think about the war, regardless of what you think about Donald Trump, why he did this, same with the Israelis, I think the long-term geopolitical impacts here are clear, and that is that the European countries, including Britain, Germany, France, they're going to have to start being more self-sufficient in terms of natural gas, and that means more drilling. I'll stop there.
Why have I pulled up to the petrol station and the diesel is $1.60? Can we stop this war? Because I can't afford this petrol.
So let me get this straight. If the UK produces our own oil, what has what's going on in Iran got to do with us? Why don't we just keep our oil here and sell it to ourselves? Well, a lot of you have asked me to break this down the same way I broke down the Nigeria one. And I get why you're asking that, right? Because every time something kicks off in the Middle East, our petrol prices jump. So let me walk you through it, right? Tensions around Iran often center on a shipping route called the Strait of Hormuz. A huge share of the world's oil passes through that one stretch of water. And when that route starts to look a little bit shaky, global oil prices jump. And here's where it gets really techie, right? Oil is one of the most globally traded commodities on earth. It trades on a global market. And one of the main benchmarks that sets that price is called Brent. It's named after a North Sea oil field. In fact, the UK actually named the benchmark and still cannot control the price, right? Some countries cushion energy shocks with state systems and domestic refining, and others rely more on the global market, especially as domestic buffers like refining capacity decline, as with us, right? Your petrol price moves with that market. So does your heating bill, because so many global gas shipments pass through the same strait, and UK electricity prices follow gas, yeah? You following me, yeah? So this is not just petrol. It's your energy bill, your food costs, your weekly shop, all connected to that same choke point. Now, here's where it gets really peak. People say the UK produces its own oil, and we do, just not enough, right? The UK has been a net importer since 2005, and North Sea production has fallen as the basin has matured. Many UK refineries were built decades ago for different crude blends, and global refining economics have since shifted. So the UK both exports and imports crude as part of the global system. Yeah? In the 1970s, the UK had around 18 oil refineries, and today there are 4 major crude refineries left. That means more of the fuel we use is refined abroad and shipped back in. And to be honest, that's not just a capacity issue, it's an economic security issue. The UK does, of course, hold strategic oil stocks under international energy agreements, but reserves by time, a buffer, not a shield. They smooth disruptions, but they cannot change the global price. Do you get that, right? Now, speaking of buffers, what can we actually do? Because things are about to get real expensive, right? Definitely use less fuel when prices spike if we can, right? If your business depends on fuel, plan for volatility, because large companies hedge fuel costs years ahead. And long term, think insulation, electric vehicles or solar. That is not just environmental, it's price protection. So next time petrol jumps overnight, remember this. The price you pay to fill your car in Birmingham is connected to a narrow waterway thousands of miles away that we named the global oil benchmark after, right? And still cannot control. So when petrol jumps, is blaming the government or petrol stations actually missing the bigger picture? Let's talk in the comments.
I got 5 on it. News summary. 1. The UAE Defense Ministry has come out and said that 186 missiles and 812 drones were launched from Iran towards Dubai, and they managed to intercept 172 missiles and 755 drones. 2. Iran and Hezbollah are tag teaming with each other, and both of them are literally throwing missiles at Israel at the same time. It seems to be directed towards Haifa and Akka, and this is to bypass the Israeli air defense system. So they're like, you know what, bruv? Let's do it. Boom, 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 boom. 3. The Red Crescent has reported that 787 people have been martyred in Iran since the start of this war. A huge percentage of those have been children, as we have seen targets against schools, gymnasiums, playgrounds, and hospitals. 4. I told you that it was going to hit us in our pockets, and it already has. Gas prices in the UK have gone up by 93%. And have you seen the videos of the queues at the petrol station? Oh my God, I'm so glad I don't have a car. I feel like people will be there for a day, for 2 days, just waiting to fill up their tank. But what are you going to do when your tank runs out? It's not going to be forever. What, a week or two? 93% people is hitting you, and it's going to hit you harder. 5. Now, we all know that the Lebanese government and the Lebanese army are a bunch of bitch boys. Sorry, I know it's Ramadan. I'm trying to filter out the swear words. Well, we all know that, and they've proved it once again. So they had a little meeting. They were like, blah, 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 blah. You know what? Let's condemn Hezbollah. So they're like, oh, Hezbollah, very, very bad. And then they decided to evacuate all the border points where they were stationed and run away. Like literally like little bitch boys, ran away, and they've left the Lebanese people to cope by themselves as there is an oncoming incursion from Israel. But at the same time, they turn around and said, yalla, yalla, bye-bye to Hezbollah. So who's going to protect the Lebanese people? It's not going to be the Lebanese army because they're hiding way back over there. So it will be Hezbollah, the group that they just outlawed. So an outlawed group is now supposed to protect the Lebanese people while the Lebanese government and the Lebanese military run away. That was the I Got 5 on It news summary. Make sure to hit the follow button below so you can stay updated as things unfold in the West Asian region.
Every time I talk about gas prices in Germany, people say the same thing. They say, yeah, but that's because of the wars. And sure, global conflicts affect oil prices. But here's what many Americans don't realize. In Germany, a big part of the price is actually taxes and energy policy. Right now, a liter can be around $2.50. That's roughly $9 to $10 per gallon. What are gas prices where you live right now?
Putin wants to help Europe. He says that Russia could resume oil and gas supplies to Europe as the global energy prices surge. But there is a condition. I read the news because I know you haven't. And the Russian President Vladimir Putin said Russia is ready to supply oil and gas again to Europe if European buyers want to restore long-term cooperation. His comments come as the war involving Iran, Israel, and the United States disrupts shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, pushing global energy prices higher. Oil prices surged past $100 per barrel, with Brent crude briefly climbing above $119, the highest levels since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. The Strait of Hormuz normally carries about 20% of the world's oil and LNG, making disruptions there a major global energy shock. Since the war in the Ukraine, the EU and the Group of Seven imposed sanctions and sharply reduced purchases of Russian energy. The EU banned maritime imports of Russian crude in 2022, while pipeline deliveries through the Druzhba pipeline have largely stopped, but not all the way. As a result, Europe cut Russian gas imports from over 40% before the war to about 13% last year in 2025. And there is some internal pressure because the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has urged the EU to suspend sanctions on Russian energy to ease rising prices. At the same time, G7 countries said that they are prepared to take necessary measures to stabilize markets, though they have not yet agreed to release emergency oil reserves. The crisis highlights how global conflict can reshape energy markets overnight. If Europe reconsidered Russian energy imports, it could ease price spikes, bringing relief to their people, but also reopen major geopolitical tensions that are tied to the Ukraine war. Let me know what you think.
You take the starting point in January of diesel and where it is now, you are paying 47,000, almost 50,000 pounds a week more for your diesel than you were on January the 2nd.
The Trump administration keeps telling us that as soon as they stop this active war in Iran, gas prices are going to come right down. I read something today that told me why that is absolutely not the case, and I want to explain it to you. So what it said is that even if Trump ends this war tomorrow, which he likely can't, the Strait of Hormuz may stay closed for months. It's all because of insurance companies. So most of us have the basic picture right. We understand that oil prices are going up because Trump launched this unauthorized war in Iran. As a result of that attack, Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz, the single most important oil transit choke point on the planet. There's no real alternative route, so if it's closed, the world feels it, not just us. So we've got all that, but there is an assumption baked in for most of us, and I think for Trump too, that the strait is shut down because of active fighting, and that once the fighting stops, ships are just going to start moving again. That's what Trump is promising. But he is leaving out a massive factor. The Strait of Hormuz was functionally shut down by paperwork. On March 1st and 2nd, 7 insurance companies filed 72-hour cancellation notices for ships transiting the Persian Gulf. And traffic in the strait immediately dropped by 80%. Not because ships couldn't physically pass. Without insurance, no port will accept you. No bank will finance your voyage. No cargo owner will load your ship. You become a commercially useless object. These 7 companies collectively insure the vast majority of the world's ocean-going shipping tonnage. As long as they refuse to insure, nothing is going anywhere. Now, war risk insurance is still technically available, but policies are now limited to 7 days. It costs more than $1 million per week. That is unsustainable. Financial analysts are warning that even if the bombs stop tomorrow, the strait could remain functionally closed for months afterward, because the insurance market and the military campaign are running on completely different clocks. Even after a ceasefire, insurance markets are going to have to rebuild their risk models from scratch, renegotiate capacity through an entire chain of reinsurers, and re-underwrite individual voyages one at a time. Now, Trump has announced the U.S. government will offer insurance to ships in the Gulf and that the military will escort them through if necessary, but so far that hasn't moved any ships because our own Navy has already said it's too dangerous. Also, taxpayers do not want to subsidize insurance for the world's ships. So when Trump stands up and says, "Oh, I ended the war and gas prices are coming down," remember, the people who actually control that strait right now work in insurance offices. They are on a completely different timeline than Trump is. They will say when they're ready to reinsure those ships, it'll be well after the bombs stop falling, possibly many months later. The first $100 tank of gas is coming, folks, and by the third one, a lot of Americans are going to be asking why nobody told them this wasn't just about bombs. It was spreadsheets, 7 companies, and an administration that started a war without reading the fine print.
So, hi.
Hello. So, one of the things we were talking about, how when we were getting gas, this is one of the things I don't miss about the Netherlands. And we were complaining about how much we were spending in gas. And then we saw some videos of people pumping 60 liters of gas.
For 160, a little over 60 liters for 160 euros.
And, I'll never forget when I was first over there, my friends, that was one of the main things they asked. What are the gas prices over there? And I sent them a picture and they said, well, that's not bad. It was like $2.89. And they said, that's not bad. That's kind of what we pay. And I said, no. Look at that letter. And I said, that's an L. It's not a G.
It's a liter.
And they said, what's an L? I said, that's a liter. I said, there's 3.5 liters in 1 gallon. So we were basically what you guys paid for 1 liter, we pay for 1 gallon.
Yeah.
So you guys paid 3.5 times more than we do.
Yeah, I was griping because we paid like $60 for a tank of gas, sorry. And that's like 180 euros.
And everyone talks about how people in Netherlands, they bike everywhere, they walk everywhere. Yeah, there's a reason, because it's freaking expensive.
Well, everything is close too.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like literally, I think our big ass truck is cheaper to run here than a little tiny Toyota car or a Kia over there.
Yep.
So that's what blows my. So that's one of the few things I don't miss about Netherlands. Y'all have my sympathy. So. Take care, guys.
Petrol and diesel prices in the UK have now risen to over £1.60 per litre. The price of a barrel of oil is now over $100, and the cost of living in the UK is about to get a whole lot worse. All because of the war in Iran. The cost of goods and services is also going to rise because of this. Not to mention utilities, which are going to skyrocket. You already have the Bank of England talking about putting the base rate up again, which will mean an increase in mortgage rates. We are well and truly screwed because of what's going on in the Middle East. It is mental to see the immediate impact, despite the fact we get 90% of our oil from the North Sea. But hey, it wouldn't be the first time that oil companies and other businesses have used the crisis as an excuse to screw over the working class. Mark my words, we're going to see petrol and diesel prices over £2 a litre this year. And if you think the cost of living has been bad, you haven't seen anything yet. The real question is though, what are Keir Starmer and this Labour government going to do about it for British people? To actually protect them from these price rises? Oh yeah, probably not a lot, as per usual. Maybe spout some nonsense about freezing rail fares or something like that. Happy Monday. Let me know what you think of this in the comments.
What in the broken Britain gas prices are sky high bullshit is this? So you know how your gas and electric bill keeps going up? Well, let me show you this graph of wholesale gas prices over the last 6 months. They've plummeted. Look at that. They've fallen off the side of a cliff. Now, have your gas bills gone down recently? Have they bollocks? This shows you right here the absolute con and monopoly racket that's being run in the UK, because I believe we've got the highest prices in Europe of gas and electric, but the wholesale prices are plummeting and your gas and electric bills keep going up. That makes sense. So we've got dysfunctional in councils that can't collect the bins. We've got the highest gas and electricity prices in Europe, even though wholesale prices are way down. I mean, look at that. They were up over 140 Great British pounds per whatever that is. They're down to freaking 82 now. They've nearly halved. Your gas bill ain't halved. We've got Labour MPs being arrested by the day for you know what. We've got the BBC.
Thank you for watching Great Minds Blacks.